There's an article in the Times today about the NHS despair about NHS nurses and doctors who are besides themselves with anxiety, who are frightened, who feel abandoned by the system, who feel that the system isn't working. And they make a point about there being a pre-COVID and a post-COVID NHS. And I think they're absolutely right to make that distinction. I think COVID was not necessarily the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem could easily also be identified as Brexit, a pre-Brexit and a post-Brexit NHS. But certainly there's an NHS today that is very difficult, that is very different and very and struggling in a way that the NHS 14 years ago was not. I don't think that's necessarily a pre and a post conservative NHS, but that's a third distinction that could be made, and that's a distinction I think we're going to hear a great deal about in the coming general election. But we're also apparently, according to Times Radio, going to hear about plans from Rishi Sunak for fixing this, and those plans are perhaps more worrying than the problem itself. One of those plans is about a data system which will put everything together and a sort of wonderful bureaucratic cure-all. It's not bureaucracy which is the solution to the NHS. Bureaucracy is the problem of the NHS. Too much bureaucracy, too many bureaucrats, and not enough money for the people who are doing the actual job. And not enough people to do the actual job. Too many pen pushers and not enough stethoscopes. And that is the problem. That is the fundamental problem. And having all our data easily accessible on our phones, for example, like that phone app for registering that you might have COVID, the track and trace. Did that work? No, it cost a huge amount of money, and essentially it failed. Essentially it failed. And it was a fairly simple app. Now, if we're going to put all our data on an app, and we're going to be able to interact with hospitals and GPs and patients on one app, on one data exchange, who's going to run that? Who's going to produce that extraordinary infrastructure for supporting such an app or such a data system? Because another part of the problem with the NHS is the myriad systems for recording data. Now, some systems are still done by hand. So what you've got is duplicated systems so that one particular system can talk to another system. Now Labour is quite right for saying we should be simplifying it. The problem is, at this particular point, to simplify that sort of data duplication would be, unfortunately, to employ more bureaucrats to work on the new rolled out data simplified version of data collection, and more bureaucrats. We're going to be employing more bureaucrats to sort out the bureaucratic mess which has got the NHS into a muddle in the first place. That, I don't think, is a solution. However, if you said anything at the moment that sounded coherent, that would be a vote winner, wouldn't it? Because all you have to do is say the NHS is in a mess. The Conservatives have been presiding. The NHS is in a mess. We are going to do, I think, even if Keir Starmer were to stand up and say, we are going to fiddle with our thumbs for the next 5 years. Cheers of delight. And that is going to solve the NHS crisis. The NHS is safe in our hands. We will take back the NHS and we will fiddle. It means nothing. We will add another layer of bureaucracy to the NHS. That will sort things out. I'm afraid that's been the solution for year after miserable year. The only solution to the NHS is dissection, is to remove layers of bureaucracy and to remove the bureaucrats. They will protest. They may even go on strike, hooray. They may think they can bring the NHS to its knees. It's already on its knees. Why are we so frightened of these bureaucrats and these managers without experience who are brought into the NHS? Why are we so frightened of these bureaucrats who are brought into the post office who demand so much money that Henry Staunton goes cap in hand to Kemi Badenoch for that money? Why are we so frightened of these people who say, well, I will only work for £300,000 a year, £500,000 a year? What ridiculous, greedy individuals are these, without any real skill, with no skill, just a lot of chutzpah? These people should be out on their ear.